Hi, everybody. Welcome to LLK number 26, Knit with Laura and Lola. I'm Laura Nelkin. I'm a knitwear designer. I live in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region, and I'm joined by my alter ego, Lola. Lola's a little bit more fun than I am, and I have to tell you that it is really convenient to have an alter ego, because every time I mess up, I can just blame stuff on her. Like if I forget to put something in a kit or I make a mistake in a pattern, I can just be like, oh, Lola was having an off day that day. I suggest that everybody get an alter ego. They're super helpful. My alter ego even has an alter ego, and that's probably a conversation for therapy and not for here. Her name is Cora, and she likes to do sit-ups. She's crazy. So I have a lot to tell you about today. I haven't done a log in a while, and the first thing you're probably going to notice is that my scene looks a little different than you've ever seen before in a log. One of the things my husband and I have been working on over the last few months is kind of upgrading my video scene so I can start doing more teaching from the house instead of having to travel anywhere to film for teaching. And so we've taken over my daughter's bedroom and kind of have a little film studio set up. We are trying out new lenses right now. So the lens we're using for this log, I don't know if the next log will look like this or it'll look a little different, but we're having a pretty good time learning and playing. And it's really fun to work with my husband on a project. I have to say, we've been laughing a lot and enjoying ourselves, and it has definitely been a blast. Things I have to tell you about as we kind of dive into that. I don't have any new classes to tell you about right now. I always will want to hear things that you want to learn as I get into starting to film things. What I'm doing to start is make sure that patterns that I'm releasing right now have really excellent video companions. So we've been working on that and kind of getting the workflow down and learning a lot about editing and title cards and end cards. And this is where I'm probably supposed to tell you you should subscribe to my channel so you hear about when those things come out, but you guys might have already done that. You just do that below if you want to. That way you'll get emails when new vlog, logs, or classes or whatever comes out over here. There, I'm losing my words already. I love to tell you guys about what I'm knitting, and unfortunately right now everything I'm knitting is super secret, and I've kind of locked myself into that for the next little while because I'm working on the March's Lola's Choice kit is shipping this week, so that you might have already gotten that by the time you're watching this. Lola's Choice is my small knitted kit club, and the May kit is on the needles, and I can't show you that because that's totally a secret. But I love it, and I think you will too. I am also working on the next pattern for the N Club, which comes out, I guess it's end of June that comes out. I'm wearing the Platy Shawl, which was the kit and design that just released for the N Club. That's like my bigger kit club. And so the Platy Shawl actually looks like a bit of a flatworm. There's pictures up on Ravelry, and I'll give you guys links to everything below. So if you're wondering about what I'm talking about, you'll be able to find that link in the show notes. Show notes makes it sound so professional. So Platy Shawl, we did pretty extensive 40-minute video tutorial. This pattern will release next February of 2022, which is crazy to think that far ahead, but knowing how this year flew, the next year is going to fly pretty quickly too, right? So I can't show you what I'm working on for the N Club. I can't show you what I'm working on for Lola's Choice. The other thing that is almost off my needles, but I just decided it was finished last night, and then I decided at 11 it needs one more element to it, is my next mystery knit-along. And I made myself a note. I have done 14 mystery knit-alongs over the years, and I actually haven't done one in, I think, going on 4 years now, maybe 5 years. The last one I did was Navigatrix, and I took a big break from doing them, and I'm ready to do another one. And I know the reason I stopped doing them is because I was doing too many of them and I just completely burned out on them. And I have to say that I feel a little bit like, do you remember in the past if you ever dated somebody and then you stopped dating them and then you decided to start dating them again, and then sometimes like that second time you start dating them, you remember why you stopped dating them? I'm hoping that the mystery knit-along isn't like that. Like there's something I didn't forget that I didn't enjoy anymore, but I just think I burned out on doing them. They're a lot of work, but they're really fun. And I have to tell you that I am super excited about this design. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's unique, and it's also easier than mystery knit-alongs I've done in the past. I have not set a date yet for when that's going to start. I just want to get into testing a bit and make sure everything's okay. There are going to be kits for it and lots of community and support. So many of you I know have done mystery knit-alongs with me before. Some of you have never done a mystery knit-along with me. And basically what a mystery knit-along is you have no idea what you're knitting. You're told what yarn to get, what beads to get if you want to work with beads. And then I release a clue every week. And you do exactly what that clue says, and you end up with a thong. Just joking. You do not end up with a thong, but every mystery knit-along I've ever designed starts out looking like a thong. And this one is no different. It definitely stays in that thong trend for as long as possible. And then it's never a thong. It's always a shawl or a cowl or a scarf. One of those three things. I lied. Last year for April Fool's Day, I designed a beaded thong. That was amazing. I'll put that below so you guys can see that. So the pandemic got to me at that point, I think. So that's kind of news about mystery knit-along, other things coming down the line. Because I don't really have any knitting to show you, and because I've been getting a little frustrated because I want to have some knitting available to work on, I'm working on knitting my husband a sweater, and I've knit him 2 or 3 sweaters over the years. Behind me is a sweater that I knit him. I looked it up today. It's from 2010 that I knit this for him. He hardly wears it because he keeps it nice for when we ever get to go out again, and he wants to have a sweater that's nice, which I really appreciate. I actually knit it in Cascade Eco Plus, I think it was. It's an Aran weight yarn. I used all natural colors. I used Elizabeth Zimmerman's percentage formula for doing the yoke, and I just measured him and measured some of his favorite sweaters and went for it, and we both absolutely love it. I love looking at it on him when he wears it so much. So I'm knitting him another sweater, and I'm going to base it on the measurements of that sweater, but I recently test knit a hat for Kristin Kapoor called the Fraser Fur hat. And then she came out with a pullover called the Fraser Fur pullover. And I really love the yoke on this pullover. So I'm going to end up using this yoke. What's different between these two is this one's worked from the top down. And I'm going to do the color work in Spin Cycle. And I only have one skein of the color that I want. So unfortunately, I have to go buy more yarn to make sure it's going to work for the yoke, because I know one skein isn't enough. And I'm going to use that for the yoke, and then I'm using some Harrisville nightshades for the body of it. So it's going to be really dark. I think it's going to be so beautiful with these two colors popping off of each other. I might try to find a green that has a little bit more light in it so they really contrast well. I might be able to like gradiate down that yoke a little bit, and I think that'll highlight the trees in her design really well. So right now what I'm doing while I'm talking to you guys, because I'm much more relaxed when I do these if I'm knitting, is I'm working a gauge swatch for it. And I'm working the gauge swatch flat, but in the round. So you've probably noticed that as I'm knitting across, I'm sliding my stitches to the other end of my needle and knitting across again. Just keep an eye on me as I'm knitting, and you'll see me do that. That way I'm simulating working in the round, because when you do a gauge swatch, you want to work your gauge swatch the exact same way you're going to work your sweater. So if you're working your sweater in the round, you want to work your gauge swatch in the round. I have a whole blog post about that if you want to learn more about that, and I can link that below for you as well. I'm passionate about gauge because you want your sweater to fit in the end. And if you don't get gauge, or you don't adjust the pattern for the gauge that you get, you're going to end up with a sweater that doesn't fit, and that's just a total shame. It's way too much work and time and energy and money to end up with something that doesn't fit the way that you want it to. So I'll be working on this. I bet I will be working on this for the next year. Like my goal will be like holiday time, right? I feel like that's a nice goal. And my idea for this is, especially once I make it through the yoke, I'll be able to just pick it up and put it down and have something really easy and soothing to work, which is a really good balance for me because a lot of the other stuff I do, as you guys know, is pretty complicated and I have to really keep track of count. And it's not as easy for me to just pick it up and knit while I'm talking to people. So that's my goal for Max's awesome sweater. And we'll see, this gauge is maybe looking, I'm not sure if you can see the air through that. It's maybe looking a little loose to me. So I'll see how this does when it blocks. I might need to go down one more needle size. I think I'm on a 5 right now, and I might need to go down to a 4. And I was hoping I didn't need to. Harrisville Nightshades is a DK weight. I believe it's a Corriedale. It's absolutely yummy and soft, and it feels really good against the skin, which I think will feel great for a sweater that's worn with like a t-shirt underneath it. Let me look at my notes because I'm just so chatty. I forget what I was going to tell you about. The other thing I want to tell you about is that the first quarter knit-along in my Ravelry group is going strong. We're on the 3rd month. The first month was, I'm not even going to remember what the themes were anymore. There were beads, there was cables, there was brioche, and there was lace. The first month was lace. So we're on to the bead month, but you can be knitting any one of my patterns to enter in the knit-along. And there's prizes every month. And March's prizes are really awesome because they're books, and I love knitting books so much, and I have a big collection, so I bought myself some new knitting books this winter, and I've got the same ones for you guys to give away to you. The first book is Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn by Stephanie Lotfin. And this book is all designs knit with self-striping yarn, and I have to tell you that you guys know I've done some designs with self-striping yarn. There are a few pieces in here that I wish that I had designed. I'm a little like, that is a brilliant idea. I'm so blown away by Stephanie's work. I believe she's Telly Bean Knits or Telly Bean Designs on Instagram, and all of the projects are up on Ravelry if you want to look at them in detail. This is a really well done and interesting book, and a really cool take on working with self-striping yarn. Another book, this one was actually sent to me and I'm keeping it, so I'll get you guys one, is Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy. I mean, come on. And it is all designs based on Star Wars. This is like approved by the Star Wars, I guess it would be George Lucas or Walt Disney. Look at that little Chewie. I love Chewie. And there's a great, this is the Death Star pillow. I bet all of us know somebody who would be happy to get a knit that is Star Wars themes. There's a Wookiee. Look at the Wookiee hat. I'll stop because I could just keep showing you every page. This is put together by Tanis Gray. It's got a bunch of different designers in it. Really fun knitting book. If you know a knitter who's also a Star Wars fan, they might be thrilled to have that. This book, it definitely got for me. Got you one too. But this is the Twisted Stitch Source Book, which is Nora Gaughan's latest stitch and design book. And I have always adored Nora's books and designs and aesthetic. She's the new editor for Vogue Knitting, which she's doing a phenomenal job. It's really beautiful. It's got really gorgeous textured stitches in it. And then one of the things it has in it is a whole section of hexagons where she's doing different hexagon designs. And she explored hexagons years ago. I believe when she worked at Barocco, she came out with a few books where she was exploring doing different designs with hexagons. And she does that again in here. So if you like designing or stitch dictionaries where you kind of pull out stitches and make cowls or hats or scarves or whatever, highly suggest this. This is fun doing little book reviews. Finally, well, there's 2 more. This book I did not know anything about, and my friend Andrea was on a Fiberside chat with Longmont Yarn Shop, and the editors of this book, who are from the Knitting Museum in Bergen, Norway, put together this book with Norwegian designers who were took inspiration from pieces in the collection, and then all got together and did this like collaborative piece. And the designs in here are really classic. I know you won't be able to see this, but it's up on Ravelry. This skirt is so classic and simple, but is so well done. It's got some striping down at the bottom. I'm not sure if it's brioche or two-color ribbing. It's really, really lovely. So if you're somebody who's really drawn to more classic designs, look at this men's sweater where they're just playing with two simple colors. I think they show it on a man and a woman. And there's one other men's sweater in here I really adore. You can tell I'm on a men's sweater kick right now. I'm not sure I'm gonna find it right now. But again, all of these patterns are listed on Ravelry, so you can look through it, and you might wanna check out this book. When I posted this on Facebook, I think a bunch of people were like, what's that book? I haven't heard about it before. And it is a really intriguing volume. And then finally, I realized I have a prize for every week, and I realized that March had 5 weeks, and I had gotten those 4 books, and I didn't have a 5th book. And I decided that the 5th book should be June Hemmons Hyatt's Principles of Knitting, which is my all-time favorite encyclopedia for knitting techniques. I think there's 36 pages in here of picking up stitches. What I'll tell you about this book is that it is not a sexy book. It is just like all text and some illustrations. It is chock full of information. So if you're somebody who likes a lot of pretty pictures and you like to maybe have more illustrations and less text, this might not be for you. But if you are somebody who wants one source with a lot of information and you like to sit down and read, then this is a book that is probably going to be right up your alley. I believe that this book was already chosen for the first week. The winner of the first week of the KAL in March is a librarian, and she chose the reference book, which I was like, right on. I have a lot of respect right there. So that's what's happening. Little book review, first quarter KAL. The next thing that I kind of waited to get through my knitting to talk about, let me pick up my knitting, is the Knit for Food Knit-a-thon. So the last log that I did, which was in January, a little while ago, I told you guys about this crazy idea I had been having for starting a knit-a-thon inspired by the Gilmore Girls knit-a-thon episode, where we would knit for 12 hours to raise money for food scarcity and insecurity in America. And it took me a little while and a bunch more thinking and a bunch more research and talking to people, but we've launched the knit-a-thon. It's going to be a 12-hour knit-a-thon on April 11th. It goes from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. If you sign up to join in and knit with us, you're committing to knit for 12 hours. There will be a Zoom event during that 12 hours, and I'm working on lining up some speakers and some knitting teachers and some entertainment. I think we'll just have some hours where there's music playing, so there's something there if you want to do that. We'll have some knitting rooms if you want to hang out and knit with other people. A schedule will come out. I think it's important that we don't all end up on Zoom for 12 hours, because I can attest to you that being on Zoom for 3 hours is exhausting. And I think we'll all burn out being on our computers for 12 hours. So I think I'll work big breaks into the Zoom day to make sure that people are kind of like getting their time off, but you're committing to knit for 12 hours and fundraise. So what you're doing with that is telling your friends and family what you're doing and asking them if they want to support you while you're knitting for 12 hours. It's just like doing a marathon or swimming across Cayuga Lake for Hospicare, any number of fundraisers you've heard about in the past where you make a commitment of something that's hard to do, and in exchange people are going to support you and we're going to raise money. The 4 organizations that I've chosen as I kind of went through who does it make sense to support with this initiative is World Central Kitchen and No Kid Hungry. I can't believe I'm going to forget as I'm telling you this because I had it down to a science. Meals on Wheels and Feeding America. So Feeding America focuses on food banks in the U.S. No Kid Hungry focuses on feeding kids and making sure that children in schools have food. Meals on Wheels focuses on delivering food to elderly and infirm people who are at home and don't have access to healthy, fresh meals. And then World Central Kitchen does amazing work both with food scarcity and then also going into areas that have trauma, like in Texas with the snowstorms or California with earthquakes. They are really good at mobilizing quickly and feeding communities using local resources to feed people quickly and easily. Their work is really intriguing, and I know I've talked to them with you guys about them before. We did a fundraiser for them last October. So those are the 4 organizations. We're going to split the money raised evenly. If you don't want to knit along with us, you can just donate. What I've been suggesting to people is if you want to donate and you don't want to knit along, when you go to click donate, just kind of scroll through and look for somebody who hasn't raised as much money and choose them to donate to. Because what we're doing is you have to raise $100 to get the Zoom link. There's kind of like a minimum to get that Zoom link to join in and knit on the day. So that's been my suggestion for people. If you're not sure who to donate to, just kind of scroll through and choose somebody so that everybody ends up getting that Zoom link in the end. And I'm lining up some fun stuff for that day, some informative stuff, some entertaining things. It would be amazing if I could show, I believe it's Season 7, Episode 9 is the Gilmore Girls episode, and it would be amazing if I could show that during the day, but I'm pretty sure that there are copyright issues around that, and I can't just like stream Netflix for all of us, but I'll find out one way or another, and I definitely don't want to break any rules while I'm doing that. What we'll be doing for people who've signed up to fundraise is weekly we'll send out an email with ideas for fundraising, just to like give you different ways to think about raising funds, or like going to your friends and family and asking them for money, because I know that is really awkward to do. I felt even awkward asking my mom to support me. She was the first person who donated, and I was like, Mom, would you help me out with this thing I'm working on? And I just wanted to make sure all the email system was working right. And she was happy to support me, which was very nice. What I'm going to be doing to give you guys an idea, and I got this from my friend Kelly, is I have a Contexta Afghan that I knit a few years ago. And that Afghan, everybody who donates in my name, they're going to get entered to possibly win that Afghan. So one of the people who donates under my name will win that Afghan. And that's like a little motivation maybe for my friends and family to want to support the cause. And blah, I lost all my words. I was doing so well and they went away. So I think we should move on from the Knit-a-thon. Links are below. Ask questions. There are threads in many places for that to help you. And another piece of that is please tell your guilds and tell your local knitting store if they want to join in. Tell your friends. Anybody can do it with us. It's not by any means a Lauren Elkin thing. It's a everybody thing. I don't want to center myself in it. I want us all to be coming together and raising the funds and being a community for this action. So please go ahead and tell friends, guilds, family, any knitters you know, your local yarn store, get people involved. The more the merrier on this one, for sure. Moving on. Teaching. I am teaching online a bit. I started feeling like I was on Zoom too much and teaching online more than I was enjoying. So I'm starting to only teach online. I'm trying to make it once a month because I lose a weekend when I teach online, and that it gets tiring quickly. So once a month I'm teaching. You can always see that schedule on my website. I'll tell you when I'm teaching on all the social media places. I believe in April I'm teaching for Knit City Montreal, which is on its second cancellation right now. Hopefully it'll happen in real life in 2022, not in Zoom life. And then I'm teaching for the web spring retreat, also online, but that one's already sold out. So those are my April. I already broke the rules and I have to in April because rules are made to be broken. In terms of sewing, because I always tell you about my sewing in these logs, no sewing right now. I'm not sewing. I bought some fabric that's about as much sewing as I've done lately. And so my fabric stash is bigger, but I do need some new clothing soon. I feel like I wanna sew a few new tops, and then eventually it'll be spring soon. And I always want new spring dresses when we get to spring. In terms of entertainment, I love telling you guys about what I'm reading and what I'm watching. I've been reading more than I was earlier this year, and after watching Bridgerton and loving Bridgerton, I devoured all of the first three. There's more of them, but the first three Bridgerton books I ate up like candy, and they were great and somewhat formulaic, and I didn't care, and I definitely motivated me to get in bed a little earlier so I could have some good reading time before it was time to fall asleep. I enjoyed those. Those are by Julia Quinn. And then in the middle of reading those, I read The Midnight Library, and I'm looking down so I get the author's name right, by Matt Haig. And if you haven't read that book, it was a really intriguing premise. It was basically like a woman, the main character was kind of in the veil in between life and death, and she ended up in this library where all of the books had like different pathways her life could take if she made different decisions, and not just like tangible decisions, but more like a emotional decision, like how she was kind of like going to approach a piece of her life, right? Like what kind of attitude she was going to have towards one event that happened. And it was interesting because I'm trying to think of a way to describe it. It almost made me a little sad because it made me start looking back at my life and like, well, what if I had done that way? What would have happened that way? So I didn't actually sleep super well when I was reading it because I ended up doing a little bit of like life work and brain work. But I loved the premise, and I would suggest it if you're up for that kind of read. I just downloaded The Four Winds by Kristin Hannah because I love her work. I've read many of her books in the past. That just came out. It gets great reviews, and I'm a chapter in and already completely sucked in. So I'm going to suggest that, even though I haven't really read far enough to tell you that it's a good book to suggest. And I also have Once and Future Witches lined up to read. I keep hearing that book is great. So I might listen to that book instead of reading Once and Future Witches while I'm in the studio. Finally, because I've been talking and I'm getting thirsty, the last things to talk about are food. I kind of always leave on my culinary note because whether you knit or you don't knit, we all eat. Not everybody cooks to the level that I cook. I don't actually always cook. I cook in these waves where I'm really into something, and then we eat whatever it is I got really into for a bunch of days, and then I have some eggs on some microwave spinach, and then I cook again. I'm almost ready to cook again. But 2 weeks ago, I did a blog post on sourdough discard and all the things you can do with your sourdough discard. I do a lot of sourdough baking. Pretty regularly, every other week, I bake us sourdough loaves, and I do 2 loaves at a time and put one loaf in the freezer. But what you end up with when you're working with sourdough is you have to feed your starter to get it all like happy and active and lively again so you can bake with it. And I really don't like throwing out my discard. So we did a blog post of all the things I love to do with my discard, and people have been leaving some great comments in that blog post for recipes that they love to make. And then somebody, I don't think it was in the blog post, I think it was on Facebook, somebody said, do you know Breadtopia? She has some awesome recipes, and I love her sourdough babka. And I love babka, I love chocolate babka, and it was a savory sourdough babka. And this wasn't a recipe for using your discard. It needed to use like really active, happy fed starter. So I got some more discard out of it. But I made it over the weekend, and I made it with garlic and cilantro and a lot of Parmesan cheese and butter. So you basically make this kind of enriched non-dough that's got milk and yogurt in it. And then after that's proved for a while, you spread it with this like garlicky, buttery, cilantro-y, cheesy spread, and then roll it up and create a babka shape out of it. And she has a whole photo tutorial. It came out really good. The thing I'm going to say is that maybe ours came out a little more garlicky, and it's great that you cannot smell my breath. There's no smell-o-vision on YouTube because it is pungent. And I think the recipe called for 4 cloves of garlic, but I used 4 cloves of garlic, but I used garlic that we got from our CSA, and it's like very happy, organic Trumansburg garlic. And I think one of the cloves was probably worth 3 cloves like that recipe was calling for. So the next time I make it, I'm gonna chop the garlic a little finer and use a little less, and maybe it'll be a little less intense than the version I made, but it was really good. Excellent. I had it last night with some spinach, and that was dinner for me. The other thing I made last week that I loved that I want to make again right away, and we ate it all up, is the smoky red lentil stew from The First Mess. And that is a vegetarian blog and cookbook. Julianne gave me their cookbook. I believe they're from Ontario. The woman who writes that, I forget her name right now. But it is, I put the recipe below for you guys. It's a really yummy red lentil stew. It uses a lot of smoked paprika and balsamic vinegar. And it's just like rich and flavorful and simple and interesting and really low fat, which balanced out the babka very nicely, I gotta say. So that's what I've been cooking right now. I also tried to make some sourdough brownies and they exploded all over my oven. So now I have a super clean oven. So that's a positive story to end this log on. Again, ask any questions. I'm around, I check comments, and I'm happy to be knitting with you guys. And until the next log, take care of yourselves.
No, boy. Such a big knitter.